My name is Wahab. I'm from Kuwait and I'm a data science major.
Hi, my name is Mingxi and I'm from China, education and public policy major.
Hi, I'm Nila Gupta. I'm from India. I'm a senior in mechanical engineering.
Hi, my name is Mohammed. I'm from Saudi Arabia and I'm a finance major.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm from Indonesia and I'm a sophomore in biomedical engineering.
You know, given what just happened at Michigan State the other night, this is actually a really disturbing class to be having. So what I'd like to do today is just really kind of come down to a certain level of respect for all that has happened. To all of those who are gun owners and gun rights people, what I want you to know is that we're having a sociological conversation with people from other countries who are going to offer a way of understanding some things, okay, from different perspectives. And it's a really unique opportunity because, you know, here we are in the US, but when you're not from the US, you just see some things very, very differently about what has come to just be this normalized reality here in this country. And so for the gun people, what I want you to know is we're just having a sociological conversation. This is not an anti-gun class. I personally grew up with guns. I started shooting guns when I was 5 years old. So it's not about that. This is about a sociological reality of what we're dealing with. So I saw this question and I just said, how bizarre it is. When I was young, we used to have nuclear drills, like nuclear war drills. We'd go down into the basement of my school and we'd sit up against the wall and then at some time we'd be notified and we'd put our heads between, like in our laps like this. And I guess that's what you would do if the nuclear bombs went off, right? I never really asked because as a kid, I thought it was very strange. And I thought, like, now as I look back on it, I think how incredibly bizarre that was. To think like somehow that's going to protect us from nuclear war and nuclear fallout. I mean, it's just kind of bizarre. But now we have these lockdown drills. And I think, wow, this is what we've come to as a civilized nation, right? So it's fascinating. If I don't judge it, it's absolutely fascinating. But it becomes normalized in the way that for me as a kid, having the nuclear drills, right, became normalized. But now as an adult, I think, how's the craziest effing thing I could ever imagine. So there's 1 billion firearms in global circulation as of 5 years ago. It's more now, but you know, probably not that much more. 85% civilian owned, which is, you know, pretty, the lion's share of those, or at least the largest, the country with the largest ownership would be the United States. Next slide. I just want to show you these things, okay, so you all can be thinking about the market share of the leading exporters of major weapons, 2017, 2021, and we're at almost 40%. We've been at almost 40% for the past 35 years that I've been tracking this. And, you know, that says something, right? It says something about a nation, right? Like for example, it says something about a so-called Christian nation, like WWJS. Like, what would Jesus say about that? Top 10 civilian gun-owning countries. So, you know, of every 100 residents, we have 120 guns. It's a lot of guns, y'all, right? That's more than one per person if you're not a math major. Gun murders per 100,000 residents. We just kind of look at, it's only 3.6 per 100,000 people, which isn't over the top, but it is by far and away higher than other countries. You know, look at Japan. Americans 25 times more likely to be murdered with a gun than people of other developed countries. Okay? This is developed countries. So this isn't, you know, like Colombia and Brazil and but if you think about all the other ways in which people can be murdered, by knives or a hatchet, an axe, a pickaxe to the brain. But all the other methods besides guns are the same between the U.S. and other countries. So think about what that means for us about guns. So on the left, the gun rate per 100,000 people, and this is gun ownership. These are states. Each one of these dots is a state. So the number of deaths by firearm per 100,000 people, okay, versus gun ownership. So you see, the more guns there are in a state, the higher is the death rate, which of course makes sense, right? But it also makes me wonder, this is a question, right, for you all. So, because what we're going to do for you all is just I want you all to make sense of this from your own countries. So, next slide. This is kind of interesting. This is just some data from Korea that I pulled together. And so Korea is 1/6 the size of the United States, okay? And so that means, there are 10 gun deaths per year in 2019 in Korea. So if Korea were the size of had the same population as the United States, not the geographic size, but the population size of the United States. If Korea had the same population size as the U.S., that 10 would be 60, because you got to multiply by 6. Okay? So in the U.S., 60 gun deaths in 2019. Bro, do you have any sense of what that 60 represents for the U.S.? How many gun deaths that is, or how often we have that many gun deaths?
A lot.
What's a lot? What would you say? Use that. Give me a number, bro. Daniel. Every what?
I would say 60,000 deaths.
No, 60 deaths every what? Every month, every week,
Every day.
every day. What would you say, bro?
I was gonna say 60 deaths in a year.
Every minute.
What's that?
Every minute.
Dude, go ahead. Yeah, we're not that bad. Fuck. That's a good guess, though. We might get to that point. Bro, next slide. Yeah, every 12 hours, right? It's damn, man. Every 12 hours. What's it like in your countries, man? Daniel, let's just start with you in Indonesia.
Okay, so we kind of do have drills, but not for that stuff, but more for earthquakes. So in Indonesia, we sometimes have earthquakes, so that's why we have lockdowns, and which is reasonable, right? Because earthquakes happen, or maybe fire drills, but I feel like that's just sort of sad to think about it.
Well, what's it like in Indonesia? Walk us through. You
Okay.
guys have gun. What's the gun situation?
So guns, firearms are illegal in Indonesia, but I also have a rifle myself. I used to shoot rats a lot back in Indonesia.
How often are you thinking about guns and murders and gun murders?
Well, in Indonesia, in Jakarta particularly, there isn't a lot of people who own guns. If you're gonna die in Jakarta, you'll probably get hit by a car, which is more likely than it is to be shot by a gun. So when I first came here, that's one of my worries, because I am going to a college, and that's kind of scary considering I've heard about school shootings and stuff. So that's something that I'm aware about in America.
So you hear about shootings in the U.S. from back home, clearly.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and let me just ask somebody else. When you were coming here to the U.S., were people afraid for you, bro?
Yeah, so my dad basically told me wherever you are, if you get into a conflict, don't engage. We don't have guns back home. Again, it's illegal for civilians to have them. So knowing that someone is out there with a gun, and if you get engaged in a fight or something, there's a good chance that they might pull a gun out and you're gone. So he said whatever happens, even if it's a small time mugging, if you have something on you, let it go. Don't engage whatsoever.
Yeah. So that's the message you get here. Sarah, how about you, man? How is it? How was it coming here? Did people, did they worry for you? Did they?
Yeah, just like what he said. My parents was also if you get into conflict, just let other things go. Just save your life, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but before I came to US, I was like never really concerned about these things, and never even think about like can get into a gun conflict or something.
Like a gunfight, like
Yeah.
at the OK Corral or something. You don't know what that is. Like a Western whatever.
Yeah, I only heard from news about these things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's it. It's like it feels like really far away from me.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, somebody else, Mohammed. How about you, man? How about you? What's your like coming here? What are some of the things you were thinking about?
I was pretty scared and paranoid. I still am.
Scared and paranoid?
Yeah, like just from the idea that someone could shoot you at any time. I feel like wherever I've been, like the few countries I've lived in, I've always felt safe, and especially like Saudi Arabia, like where I'm from. It's never a thought, like I never think of just, someone pulling out a gun. Like I could walk in the street safely. If you get into arguments, get into fights, like nothing, like maybe it'll get physical, but no guns are usually involved. So like my parents were quite worried for me, and yeah, that's about it.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you were scared, what were you scared of?
Just the idea of, you could get into an altercation and there's a there's a higher chance in the US of any situation or argument ending in, something fatal and like a fatal outcome. That to me is scary because I've always felt safe. Like I've never felt scared. And like just hearing what like happened in Michigan, for example, that's scary. And just the idea that you live in a place where safety is not necessarily, what's the word? You're not necessarily fully safe wherever you are, even in your own dorm, for example.
Yeah.
That scares me.
So I used to travel to the Gulf region a lot, to Kuwait, to Qatar, to the Emirates, to all over. And I remember Americans would always say, if I say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to the Middle East," they'd be like, "Oh, Iraq, right? Going to Iraq, like, be careful. Are you going to be safe over there, right?" And I'm like, "You can be safe over here. I'm living in the U.S., right?" Do you have like a what would you like?
It's pretty much the opposite for us. Like, for example, like
Hold it close.
Like when I came to the United States, like the shootings and stuff, it's not something I ever like really actively think about, but it is like my parents would worry because they do hear the news, and at this point it's like a stigma or like a stereotype about the US where like shootings are common, like everyone has guns. So like internationally it's like I know a lot of people that, like their parents or like their family members or whatever would worry when they do go to the US, and it's like, oh, stay safe, like don't get involved in like an armed conflict or something.
Hey, let me ask you this question. When you say people, like you're not afraid, what do you think, what is it that leads you to not be afraid?
It's not like if someone does have a gun, of course, like I feel like most people would be afraid, but it's just because like back home I'm just so like it's like used to like never really thinking about guns like or gun violence. So once you're here, like it's not something I actively like just think about. It's not like something I worry about. Like I'm never like, oh, there might be like a gun, like someone with a gun in a store who's like gonna shoot us up.
When you've acclimated yourself to a place and you start to feel comfortable, then you're not really thinking about those things, right? Like I remember, like when I'm in conflict zones, and I've been in a couple different war zones, right? After a while, like you're just, yeah, there's a war going on, but you're just like, it's just here you are. Like you're just living, like the conflict isn't happening. You might even hear bombs going off over there, but they're not going off here. So it's like, okay, I'm safe, I'm fine. You know, and so I'm wondering if some of that goes on for you all. You get here, but if your parents or somebody else has never been here, they don't know. There's really not a shooting in every city on it every day kind of thing, right? Although there are a lot. Does anybody want to weigh in on that a little bit?
I feel like you do hear it in the news a lot, but
yeah,
if it like I feel like for the most part, if it's not something like that happens to you or someone you know, it's and like and especially if it's not in like a close vicinity, it's hard to actively just like think about it like if it's going to happen.